Did you hear it say that?
Yeah, it popped up. It yelled at me.
Wow.
Like, hey, it's happening.
That's new.
Okay.
That must be a Zoom update.
Probably so, but you know, then everybody's aware.
Yeah.
So.
Welcome back, everyone, to Season 4 of the Kelly Mental Health Podcast, located in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Throughout this season, CEO Linda Kelly will be chatting with people from many walks of life across the world about a variety of mental health and wellness topics. Please keep in mind that this is not a substitution for counseling. If you would like to talk to a licensed therapist, please visit us at www.kellymentalhealth.com.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Season 4, Episode 6 of the Kelly Mental Health Podcast. We have the incredible Linda Kelly with us as per usual today. And we also have her little guest, as you can see. She's just chilling out with us.
Yeah.
She was yelling at me, so I can't put her down.
Yeah, so we're all hanging out today. But we also have a very special guest, Kristen Arnzten. She is a registered social worker and also a master's in social work, who recently joined the KMH team here in Thunder Bay. So we're very excited to introduce you to Kristen and discuss the variety of skills that she brings to KMH. So without further ado, welcome, Kristen.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here. I've really been happy to join the team.
It's been busy. I hear. I work from home, so we have like a little chat, so we all kind of talk every day. But I've been hearing that it's extremely busy for all you guys right now. So
yeah. Yes, people are reaching out more, and it's been interesting for me too because of the pandemic. I was working remotely for most of a year, and now getting back to seeing people in person in the office, it's been a little bit of an adjustment to feel like, oh, it is okay to be around other people again.
We talked about that a few episodes ago, saying about how, once things start opening up again and we start kind of, somewhat kind of getting back into like some type of normality, it just feels weird though. Like all of us are kind of like, oh, I don't know. And I'm very weary about it.
Yeah, like it was even kind of difficult sometimes to watch television because you were like, look at all those people being close together inside without a mask. It's very weird.
Yeah. All those sports games that are cropping up right now. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
All these stadiums completely open.
The Habs game last night with like against Las Vegas. My aunt and I were watching it and I was like, what is happening right now? Like it was filled and no one was wearing masks and I was like, this is the strangest thing. And I was so upset about it. I couldn't watch the game. I was like, I'm just not okay.
It's too distressing.
I know. I was at Superstore this morning and I get up to the cashier and there's someone ahead of me and we kind of lock eyes and we're looking at each other and I go, should I unload or should I wait? Are you still supposed to wash the belt? Because I got yelled at before. I got yelled at.
I actually always ask now, like, because I always like, if there's like a huge like gap, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna ask. So I ask them if they have any issues with me loading up my groceries on there. And most people, I haven't had any no's yet. So most people are like, yeah, no, go ahead. So I'm like, okay. And I still keep my distance, like. So, but it's just still, it doesn't feel real that things are opening. Like a friend asked me to go have like patio food and drinks tonight. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that yet.
Is that against the rules still? I feel like it's still against the rules.
I know. I just got my second vaccine today. And so you think, I know it's you still have to be cautious and everything like that. I still plan to, but I just still feel, I'm like, no, I don't know if I want to do that.
A little overwhelming for sure.
Exactly. So Kristen, so you're new to Thunder Bay. So let's talk a little bit about that. So where did you kind of come from and what brought you to Thunder Bay?
Exactly. Yeah. So I've traveled a bit far. I came from the States and I lived in Portland, Oregon and the West Coast. And so my family and I had been talking for a while about wanting to like move out of Portland, wanting to like find some other opportunities, maybe move to another country. We thought about like Europe and Australia and Canada. And then we really settled on like, and this has been a process for several like years of conversation, but the pandemic kind of like moved up our timeline, and just watching the way the States responded to the pandemic versus how Canada has, as well as just a lot of things like that. So yeah, we decided Canada fits because my husband would die if he was hot. And so we can't go to anything near the equator. And he's tickled to death. He's like, it's going to be below freezing for like 6 months. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And so I started applying for jobs in around September of last year, and then was lucky enough that Kelly Mental Health gave me a chance. And because I'm an essential worker, I was able to come into Canada and quarantine, and then starting in May here at Kelly Mental Health. So
it's very unusual for us in Thunder Bay to have people wanting to come here. So, when people apply, it's usually like a joke.
Yeah, a lot of people have been like, wait, you chose to come here? Why did you do that?
Yeah.
And part of it is that with my family, we've always talked about like we wanted to be in a smaller place. Living in the city wasn't necessarily our urgency. We definitely looked at places like Ottawa and even in like Montreal, but since I don't speak French, I can't go there. But then when we saw this was an opportunity, we started looking around. We're like, hey, it's kind of like, it's not too big, not too small. A little background, my husband and I met while we were in college in a little town called Bellingham, which is just about an hour south of Vancouver, BC. And this town of Thunder Bay reminds us very much of what it was like when we were going to college. Small college town, lots of outdoor stuff to do. People are like really nice. And yeah, so it was kind of like, yeah, we don't need a big city. We're not partiers. We're not, we like to go out into the woods. We like to go camping. We like to go hiking and swimming and fishing. And so we just like look around. We're like, this is working out too well, and it's too nice. It's just like there's no bad sides.
Knock on wood.
Like, knock on wood, yes. Yeah, my husband's like, I drive on the road, and I'm not like wanting to like go into road rage all the time. It's really great.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna say what. We don't want to break anything.
I know it, and it's funny because then I'll hear people like, oh, this is very like, it's not what it used to be. And I'm like, man, this is a lot better than I was used to. So maybe it was really bad where I was. So,
well, that's good. I'm glad that you guys kind of checked off some boxes and it got you here because you joined the awesome team at KMH and we love having you, and it's just been really nice. It feels like you've worked with us for so long. I was talking to our manager about that, and like everyone said that everyone just feels that you've just been here for so long. So it's so nice to finally connect with you. I don't really get to see a lot of people.
Right, I know. Like the pandemic and like working at a distance, it makes it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I get too distracted though. Linda knows I get way too distracted when I'm like around a million people. Yeah, it's just this works well. I get lots of stuff done.
This is actually Cassandra's socializing hour.
Yes.
Yeah. I used to be the most like social person, and now I went backwards, and now I'm just like hang out and do my own. Yeah, it's funny. I was going through a phase, actually. We did an episode about me. I was having trouble, and a lot of people were at that point in time physically leaving their houses. I started having panic attacks and all that, and I'm proud to say that I don't have that anymore. I don't get anxious. I've been really like, I started journaling again. So I've been working through a lot of that myself. And so, but yeah, that's been helping me out quite a bit. And so I'm good at that. I'm okay. I moved too. So I think that's a big stressor. Yeah, as you know, moving in a pandemic is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's very, very peculiar.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. So, but things are good. So we kind of wanted to talk about, because you have so many specialties, and we never want to just focus on one, but something that we kind of wanted to talk today about is children and teen development, and obviously kind of discuss through a pandemic, because things have changed. I've seen tons of articles that this is kind of put a halt on things in their minds and stuff like that. So Linda, you've even discussed with your son about how things have changed drastically from when you were younger, at his age that he is now. And so I kind of thought it would be a good opportunity just to discuss, to see if there's anyone that we could help that are, facing these like obstacles with their kids and their teens. So have you had any situations like clients that have come in and is this something that has come to your attention basically?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I've had a definitely an increase in teens or parents of teens reaching out and being distressed and really concerned about drastic changes in personality. A big thing that I hear from teenagers were things about really missing friends, struggling with their desire for socializing versus their parents' level of comfort with the pandemic. Their struggles, a lot of them with what it's like to do school online, which is like a very different system than going to in-person school. So and then the feelings of loss around like losing friendships just anyway. And so for teens, it's a lot of times that like they are uber connected through their phones, but yet they're also really isolated at the same time. So that's been a big thing for watching teenagers and parents go through this process.
The social development is really getting constricted because you have to infer so much about tone in text and on social media, but it's such a big deal for our developing brains as teenagers to be in within a certain distance of people, to pick up on their body language, to put things together, and they're missing all of that.
Right. And so much of how teenagers communicate and interpret the world is through an emotional lens because of the way their brains are and their puberty and everything. And so they're missing a lot of data essentially when they're not seeing people in person to make sense of and comprehend the world and what other people are thinking and feeling, developing that empathy. There's just there's a lot of holes in their information.
It's crazy. I can't even, I try to put myself in their shoes and I can't. I honestly, I couldn't imagine even going through high school right now and trying to go through all these difficulties and, going and having to work from home, and because I am a hands-on learner, so having to go through that. And, I was driving, was it yesterday or the day before? Must have been yesterday. I was driving past Westgate and I saw a few, younger kids, and I guess they had just graduated. And so they had their gowns on and they were all socially distanced. And I was like, oh my God, it was so sweet to see. But at the same time, my heart kind of felt for them because I was like, wow, I remember my graduation and it was just it was an incredible time. And there were so many friends and family around. And so I see this and it was kind of sad. It was bittersweet in a sense. And so I just couldn't even imagine that. They're kind of getting robbed of that, that big celebration. And it's just hard. And I think at this point in time, we've seen even salons open up when they shouldn't have, and with them we heard them getting fined and all this stuff. So I think a lot of those teenagers right now are probably going through a rebellious stage in a sense too, because they're it's they're living we're living, I call it, what the heck was it, what's that movie, Footloose. I'm we're living in the Footloose times. You can't dance, you can't do anything, you know what I mean? I dance in the shower. That's the closest thing I do now.
There you go.
Yeah, so I think it's just a crazy time that they're going through. So I put myself in their shoes and I'm I would be acting out so much. There wouldn't even be an option for me not to. My mother would not have been able to handle it.
Right.
Personally, I would be fine not having my grad, especially with how rampant social media is now, because you just don't want anything that happens those nights going online. I have a lot of embarrassing years to live down. I'm glad it's not advertised.
We were all dumb teenagers, weren't we?
Yeah.
But that's what
have my moments.
Yeah. Well, and the teenage brain is literally different than an adult brain. I'm really fascinated with the way that the human body and the brain and personality develop over time. And around the time when puberty starts, teenagers go through this whole thing, the the technical term is synaptogenesis. But basically it means that you're like, your brain builds a bunch of freeways between all the neurons and like you're thinking a bunch of things. But you're not really efficient about it. So you're like, wow, lots of information, not good at filtering. Yeah. And then, you know, as you get to be like 14, 15, your brain kind of like specializes, cuts out the extra roads, and then you can like start going from there. But on top of that, like this part of your brain up here is like where all you're like, oh, forward thinking, processing, logical. It doesn't stop developing until you're 25. Oh, wow. And so like, that's why teenagers literally cannot think about consequences. Like they don't have the hardware to do it.
Yeah. That's actually really fascinating. I had no idea.
Wait, so when you're saying that every time my parents used to say, "What were you thinking?" and I would be like, "Oh, I don't know." That was actually true. I really didn't know.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, like we like they're thinking, and like some teenagers are like sharper than others, but they're still like there's a lot of chaos going on, and like a lot of and like I said, teenagers are more apt to think from an emotional brain than they are from a logical brain. Part of because the logical brain is not available, but because they're feeling everything. Like that's why a lot of teenagers feel like I'm always under a spotlight and everybody's looking at me. With online school, that kind of is true too, because like, oh, I can always see myself on the Zoom and like everybody else is looking at me too.
That is so interesting. I actually had no idea. Now I'm like rethinking my entire teens.
Well, and realistically though, I mean, I think of this in terms of young children as well. Sometimes I get a little snappy with my husband because he talks to my son. He gets really mad at him when he does dumb things. And I said, he's been on this earth for 11 years. He literally does not know what the consequence is. He has no emotional memory tied to making this mistake, you know? Right. So send him out there with the scissors to cut the grass that he missed. I mean, he doesn't know yet. He doesn't understand that if he leaves, you know, well, I mean, now he'll make sure the stove is off, but before he didn't know what would happen if he accidentally left an element on.
It reminds me of when my kiddo was 2 and he wanted to warm up his tortilla in the microwave because he likes them warm. So he stuck it in there, and I think he hit something like 2 or 3 minutes. And then like, you know, amazingly, microwaves will burn things. It's pretty awesome. Also, we found out that most microwaves have some sort of setting that you can push to turn off the buttons so that your children cannot get into those.
I heard that some even have a mute button, and I can't figure out how to do this.
Because does the beeping drive you crazy? Oh.
Yeah, that's why you always pull it open at 1 minute or 1 second, and you
got me too. I do that too.
Anyway, yeah.
I love our podcast. We get so sidetracked. We're talking about microwaves right now.
and you're like, maybe I've got sensory processing issues.
Okay, if you go to Safeway at 7:00 at night and they've got half the lights dimmed and all the music is off and no one's talking to anybody,
it's so nice.
And then they turned the lights on when the hour was over, and I'm like, overstimulated. I had to get out. Yeah.
I used to love. I didn't know why they were doing that for the longest time, and then I finally read they had like a big sheet of paper and like a big notice, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. So I actually really enjoyed shopping at Safeway when that was happening. I don't know if they still do. I started going to Superstore. It's too much there, but I just I just know where everything is. I'm a creature of habit, so like I like going and just knowing where things are. And so
don't you hate it when they remodel your favorite grocery store and you're like, I can't find anything, why did you mess with it was perfect?
Change is I like change, but I just it's difficult
but not there.
For me.
Like, leave
not at my grocery store, but just because I just want to get the heck out of there, you know. I'm like always in a rush and I'm like still kind of anxious, and so I'm like, oh, don't remodel things.
Don't go to Canadian Tire right now. Just don't.
I haven't gone out like everyone. I was so busy. Like when everything opened up or slowly started opening up on Friday, it was so busy, and I just refused. I don't want to. No, I refuse at this point.
I'll just stay home till like Sunday evening.
The line up around the building down the dark alley around Winners.
Oh, I saw pictures.
But
don't
Kristen,
get me wrong, like I love that, but I couldn't sit there in a line. But
it's not worth it. No, I will. You know, speaking of which, Kristen, children and teens with sensory issues. Let's talk about that a little bit with the impact of the pandemic.
I think that honestly, so in the States, like we went into lockdown first in like March, April, May for a little while, and schools closed. And my sensory processing kids were happy. They were like, we don't have to go to school and figure out how to manage and do all this homework we don't understand. And we're like, life is good now. Like, cause like, oh, my ADHD and sensory processing kids are always like loving summer because they don't have that pressure of like, I've got to do this thing. I don't know how to do this assignment. I've been putting it off and now I feel bad. And like this whole cycle that they go through, a lot of them, because I noticed a lot of my sensory processing and ADHD and autism spectrum kiddos, they get a sprinkling of anxiety, like that Venn diagram really overlaps a lot. And so, because they're, and I like to think about it too, is like with ADD and ADHD, I think about it as too much information without a good filter. So it's not like there's a deficit in information. It's a deficit in like categorizing and like managing the information. So that's part of what makes it so difficult for our kiddos, is that they're like, oh, I've got all this stuff going on in my head and there's so much noise. I can't like be here with you right now. So initially when the pandemic started, my kiddos were doing better, but then that wave of anxiety and that stress came back and they, missing friends, connections, missing the data of like being around other people and like, getting that sensory information from other people. It definitely got harder. And then when school started back up in the fall, all online in the States, it was really hard for a lot of kids. They could not sit still for 6 or 8 hours and do homework and like figure it out themselves and pay attention and attend to what was being told to them. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't a good setup for a lot of kids.
Yeah, I have noticed the same with especially those with ADHD, myself included, that we've just been thriving.
You're like, this is great. I can structure everything the way I want to. Well, except for like a little structure.
Well, but it's just, even thinking about the mental energy that it takes to even decide what clothes to wear when nothing feels good, taking that all out of the picture. Yeah. Or, okay, is this the day that I wash my hair or do I wait? Can I wait a little bit? Even all of those things, it takes away from your mental energy and then you have less left over for organization and categorizing and prioritizing.
Yeah, it's true. I noticed that too for a lot of teens. There's a lot of like sensory processing or not, like a lot of teens have their identity wrapped up in the idea of being a good student. And what it means to be a good student is different when you're doing online school in a pandemic than it does mean when you're in a classroom. And so a lot of the conversations I'm having with teens and parents is like, okay, so maybe we need to step back and rewrite the rules of what it means to do a good job in this circumstance, of when we don't have the tools and resources to function at a level what we might normally. So maybe it's going to be like, you're going to do a half-assed job on something and that's okay.
Yeah. We have to rethink our expectations a little bit otherwise, because the world has changed, right?
Right. And giving ourselves permission that it's not letting go of standards altogether, but it's saying like, are these standards attainable and sustainable? Or do we need to like say, okay, given the circumstances we're in, we're doing the best we can?
Yeah, well, I had a conversation with, another parent, but actually, Anne from one of the last podcast episodes, and one of her biggest troubles was just all this pressure she put on herself to keep the kids going, keep them at that level that they were at, and she was just heartbroken to watch them start to slip. And I kept trying to tell her, you have to relax, you have to adjust your expectations, but there's that sense of identity for her as well as a parent. Right. I'm responsible for what happens to my kids.
Right. Like I stopped being a good parent when my kid is failing.
Right.
And are they failing? I mean, like, that's the thing we have to ask ourselves. Like, is this failure or is this like doing okay in the circumstances? I think that Another thing that comes up is just giving ourselves permission that maybe the standards of like keeping up really don't mean anything, because what are we keeping up with? Like, are we falling behind or keeping up with some standard that doesn't really exist anyway? And maybe that's part of why we were so stressed even before the pandemic. And we have to say, like, are we keeping up with ourselves? Are we doing enough for ourselves? And like, am I doing a little better yesterday than I did today? Sorry, other way around. Like making improvements against our own measurements, like the race against ourselves to become better people day by day, and doing our best, and whatever the best might look like day to day can shift. And I always try to encourage people, like, progress is not linear. It goes up and down, but you have to like look over time and say, 6 months ago, where was I at and where am I now? And, if I'm a little bit better, or maybe even like staying steady, at least, I'm taking steps to take care of myself.
So that's a really, really important skill, I think, to develop, and something that is a little bit, maybe a little bit sad or depressing to share, is that when you're in school and you're a kid, you have usually parents or guardians or school itself to give you structure, to teach you this is how to be and this is how to meet the expectations. When you become an adult, maybe you might have some of that at your job, but you don't have that, how to meet the criteria to get an A+ in home life. And then if you do like me and you open a business, you have even less. You have no goalposts. You got these books telling you to be a millionaire overnight and work 24/7. And then you've got the other books saying, if you work more than 4 hours a week, you're a fool. There's no goalposts. So that skill to be able to adjust and to understand and to rate yourself based on what's important to you, that's huge.
Right. Yeah. Learning that skill set. I don't think that we always do a good job by our teenagers of teaching that intrinsic motivation and teaching that ability to assess what's important to us versus what like the rules say. I think about it a lot as like, there's a very laid out structure that people go through, like you go to elementary school, then you go to high school, then you go to university, and then like you get a job, and then you get a family and you have some kids, but then it kind of like, it gets more vague as you go along, and you're like, well,
guess so I'll even just die.
Even my early 20 somethings, when I talk to them, they're like, well, I don't know what I should do. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know. Nobody told me what I'm supposed to do. So I'm like, apparently when you're an adult, there's no wrong answers. Just figure out what you want to do and go that direction.
You just wing it.
Like, what I like to tell my 18-year-olds is like, okay, so you're a level 1 adult. You have no gear, you have no skill sets, you're in a video game and you have like no abilities, you don't have any spells, anything. So you have to just grind out the levels. You got to do the work and then become a level 2 adult and figure stuff out. And eventually you'll get there and you get some really cool loot on the way, but none of us know what we're doing. We're just kind of going through the motions.
In the meantime, safeguard your health. Get your health bar up there.
That's right.
I wish you were my counselor when I was 18. Like, I would have died like through this conversation. I would have been like, yeah, level 2. Like,
look at me. I'm there.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting though. Like, I mean, even for myself, like, I always put so much pressure on myself, and I'm 30 years old, but I still do that. And I don't want to say it's just social media, because I have a love and a hate for social media, but it's my job,
Right.
But I love it. But no, trust me, it's just the best thing in the world. Social media day is coming up, and I cannot wait to talk a little bit more about that, and because there's so much positives when it comes to social. But with that being said, it's like you're always seeing, for myself, I'm 30, seeing, these other 30-year-olds, and I'm seeing their lives, and they're married, they have kids and all this stuff. And so it's like I'm internalizing all that, and I'm taking that, I'm putting that weight on my own shoulders. And so, something that I did for myself is I started unfollowing people, and it was nothing against them. It was just something that I just needed to remove myself from. And so that's been kind of helping me a little bit more. But it's hard, because even, talking about structure and everything, it's like, where do you find that at this age, and like what's right, what's wrong exactly, like what's good, what's not good enough, like you just, like that's why I say I'm just winging it.
Right, absolutely.
It must be so difficult for teens, like in, at this
Right.
stage in their lives, going through the pandemic and then going through this, and children and everything. I just couldn't imagine.
Yeah. So I think it'll be really interesting over the next several years to see kind of like the shifts in society that come out of this. Like us as adults, we can kind of like, we can roll with it or not. And teenagers they're bouncy and flexible. And so they can really adjust to it too. But I think there's going to be some like interesting waves of like societal change in maybe like 10 years to really see like, oh, that's what's going to come out of this for our teenagers. Like the things they change about the world, the things they struggle with. I mean, it's going to be really, I don't know, be fascinating to watch and go through it.
What do you find are the common issues that you see coming out of just seeing teens as a counselor? What are they talking about mostly?
They're talking a lot about how much they struggle with school, how much they feel so much guilt about late assignments, struggling to understand and feeling like it's their fault that they don't understand, rather than the teaching structure not being effective for them to comprehend. I'm hearing friendship fallout. A lot of like, because of the missing information, like a lot of people are like, hey, I'm going to add you and 15 other friends to this group chat and we're all going to talk. And then somehow somebody gets bullied and then somebody is having these mental health issues. And like, so like the ebb and flow of like the rules and outcomes of friendships are really kind of more intense on a social media platform, as well as when that's the only way you can communicate with people.
They're being tested. All their friendships are being tested right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're already kind of like, the structure of friendship is really fragile already as a teenager, because you're figuring yourself out. Your like whole job as a teenager is to differentiate yourself from your parents and become an individual, but also test out all sorts of different ways of being in the world and like who you want to be. So so it's like already precarious to be in that range, and then to isolate our teens even more. It's like, I think that's making it really tough on them.
Well, I think I'm not alone in, having been bullied and automatically thinking that someone's messing with me all the time. It just, goes back to, I remember one time in high school, there was a person, a boy that I met and I liked him. And so I said, hey, do you want to connect on MSN Messenger? And he's like, sure. And he sends me a Yahoo email address. And my little suspicious brain said, oh, he's messing with me. He's making fun of me because there's no way that doesn't work. You have to have a Hotmail address. Well, I didn't know that MSN had changed their rules. And so I got really pissed at him. And I'm like, okay, forget it then. And it was just such a simple thing, right? But it's like, you're trying to figure out who you can be yourself around, who you can trust, and realistically, some people do get bullied. So sometimes you can't trust.
Right.
We've got kids today, and there was a 7-year-old I saw before that he told me someone told him just to kill himself on Facebook. They posted it right on his wall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And this is rampant. This happens all the time because people are separated through that keyboard.
Yeah. And like the kid who posted that to the 7-year-old didn't get the feedback loop of shock and like horror from the other person to say, oh, that's a bad thing to say. You really shouldn't say that to people. That's really hurtful. They're just like, oh, whatever, go kill yourself, go die in a fire, whatever. And then it's like moved on. I heard a really good saying the other day, is like the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. And so it's very easy if you're the one cutting, it has no effect on you, but it creates an indelible effect on the person who it hurts. So I think it's really important that we as adults try to model that for our kiddos, try to remind them of the fact that sometimes people don't realize what they do to you and you still have a right to your hurt. but try to contextualize it like, what are some alternative theories about why they did this thing might be, so that we don't get stuck in that our worst case scenario narrative is the only way that things can be interpreted.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly hear my son complaining sometimes. Oh, so-and-so kicked me out of the Zoom meeting. Like, I guess kids can sort of remove each other, and sometimes it's deliberate, but sometimes it's just network issues.
Yeah.
So you see, this is like the new bullying here.
Right. You're like,
that
I muted you.
It's so weird. It's so weird that like that is their like form now, though. You know what I mean? Like I think back to like even growing up, like yeah, we had MSN and like that was fun, but like I never stayed inside the house. Like I was rollerblading, I was biking, I was always outside with my friends. We were always like, the house was not fun. Like this was not a cool place to be. Like,
right.
you know,
Parents are there. That's gross.
Yeah. So like we, you know, we wanted to be cool. And so I felt it's weird because like when I look at, you know, the past, it's like I don't think now I'm on just like I'm very honest and open about, you know, my anxiety and my depression and all that kind of stuff. And I think and I do give social media benefits in a sense because it allows people to use that as an outlet, whereas before, you know, mental health wasn't as talked about as much. I really do believe, like we've even had clients come to Kelly Mental Health that ask us, like, is it okay, like after they're done counseling, ask us, is it okay if we post like a picture of us in the building? There's no one around, but like we want to like spread the word that we were, you know, at Kelly Mental Health and blah, blah, blah. And of course we're like, yeah, you know, and so that kind of stuff back in the day wasn't as popular, you know what I mean? Like it was more of like a shame thing to go to therapy. It was like you were weak and I feel, so I feel like now I do kind of have to give a lot of respect to our younger generation when it comes to that, because a lot of them are talking about it and they're making it more of a thing. It's turning into almost like it's turning into like a fad, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, cool, like therapy, which I know it's not the greatest thing, but it is in a sense because more people are talking about it. And I think that is something that's different. Like when I look at just, you know, even 10 years ago, it's just has changed a lot. So, and especially with this pandemic, now we have a lot of, you know, celebrities coming forth and saying that this has affected them. Like Ryan Reynolds, we love him. Everyone loves Ryan Reynolds.
He's pretty
and
amazing.
So, so, you know, love, you know, our Canadian actor, and he came forward and he just talked about that. He opened up about, you know, his struggles with anxiety and all that stuff. And so it's crazy to see the times and how it's changed and the development of, you know, of I guess the level of comfort that everyone's at to talk about it. And even us, we're saying on a podcast and we're openly talking about it.
Right. Yeah.
Where it's like
it's pretty cool. Yeah. I think I, you know, even for the fact that the pandemic has been so difficult, the kids give me a lot of hope. But yeah, like I feel a lot of hope for the younger generation because like they're changing things. Like they're more mental health aware. They're more pronoun LGBTQ aware. Like the level of acceptance of like you don't have to be normal to be accepted.
Yeah,
you can just be whomever you are, and I like you for who you are.
Yeah, they're starting some stuff. They're starting some trends, and I don't. It's hard to keep up being on social media. Holy man, I live on it, and it's a lot. Like I've moved in with my aunt now, and so my aunt, I'm always on my phone, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, look at this, and I'm like showing her stuff, and she's like, wow, like it's just a lot. So I think I've overwhelmed her brain with all the amount of stuff I've showed her.
She's like, I've got a lot to process here. I don't know.
Yeah, there's just so much going on.
Well, it really is. And even what you're talking about too, with that acceptance and that not tolerance, because tolerance, you know, it
like,
infers,
I'll put up with you, but I don't like it.
Yeah. Really a lot more acceptance and sort of a increased insight, awareness that people don't just fit in boxes. But I think all of those phenomenons and how quickly they're rolling out, like do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. It's bloody exhausting for us adults.
Yes.
But then for the teens, a lot of teens that are still finding their identity, going through it themselves, have close personal connections with people who are going through this. It's kind of another way of creating that criteria, remember, for success. Because the more accepting we can be, well, then the more I fit in this society.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Times are changing.
So
Times are changing. I mean, I'm hoping, and I'm hopeful that we're going to keep going down this path. And I remember, even at the beginning, we make lots of jokes and like we say like, oh, like it's not our generation and stuff. But now I'm like, it's not, but like I'm getting into it, and it's just, but you're right, it is exhausting. There's a lot of stuff going on. I can't keep up with it. Like my brain is only so big, and it's a lot.
And it is. And I think it's really important for us to learn how to, without rejecting this stuff, to be able to put it on the shelf a little bit, to give ourselves and other people permission to just go, you know what, I can't right now. Like there was this post that came up on social media, very, very much of an activist person that I, see from time to time. And what was it? It said, don't say the word LGBTQ2 because that's silencing us. Say the words lesbian, say the words gay. And I'm like, you know what? I can't right now.
I only have 140 characters on my Twitter, so I'm doing the best I can. Right?
I'm just like, I can't and then the more, and another one too was kind of shooting down, how sometimes people will say, oh, free hugs for anyone who was rejected by their parents. And it's supposed to be like a sweet little thing. Well, it was a total and complete rejection of that. It's like, that's cheap. It's fake. It's this, it's that, LGBTQ people, they need support. They need actual, like, tangible, help me find housing when my parents throw me out, help, and I was, at first I was like, okay, I can't right now. I can't take this on and think about, but after a while I had some time and okay, you know what, that makes perfect sense. What good is I'm going to stand here and give free hugs to people versus let's stop, discrimination.
Right.
I think that's something that we also have to remember is that because there is so much going on, that exactly how you said, like, I can't right now. And we've noticed it on social media. We've noticed the trends. I can physically, literally tell when someone is on social, like our followers are like, I can't right now.
No room for that.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's fine. I even have days like that. We all do. And so it's acceptable. I think because we were in such, that hypervigilant state for so long. And I think that we're slowly coming out of it. And obviously we're still in it, but I think our bodies and we're just mentally and physically drained. And so it's okay. Like, that's why you'll see, like, a certain times of the day, like I'll put on like a nice, like, lighthearted quote and stuff just to get people by. And, so sometimes, like, our brains just don't want to think. And I think that, you're allowed, and people need to give yourself permission to say, I can't handle that right now. My brain is just overworked, overwhelmed, and I just need to take a day and, and just do something that makes me happy. And, like, when I feel like that, I just turn myself off and I just do my design. So I just kind of get lost in that. So it's just physically giving yourself permission. That's the hardest thing, because I wasn't doing that for the longest time.
You're right. And even for teens, right? Because they're so socially, like, the social world is so important in terms of their identity and their value, right? How could a teen, especially even myself as a teen, how could they shut that off? How could they ever give themselves permission to be like, you know what, I can't take on your trauma. Yeah,
that fear of missing out, and even like helping a friend, or even missing that conversation online. So what would you recommend, I guess, say if there are children and teens that are kind of struggling, parents are noticing, they're just overwhelmed and stuff. So what are some things that you would recommend, Kristen, to them?
Well, I like to really encourage my teens that they don't have to figure it out all themselves. And there are many things to be passionate about, but you don't have to sacrifice yourself on every hill. It's okay to choose what's important to you, what you can handle. Like, if you have friends that you want to talk to, I encourage the teens to check in. And I say to my teens, say the quiet part loud. So if you're like, hey, I'm feeling kind of stressed, I don't know if I can handle that right now. Or like, hey, I really need to unload. Are you in a good place to do that right now? And as a skill set to be good caretakers for ourselves and our friends it's a good adult skill too, but teens can really, like, a lot of teens that I talk with, they'll be like, oh, my friend told me this really heavy thing and then I didn't know what to do with it and I tried to fix it and I couldn't sleep and I spent days up at night, and then my parents took away my phone and then I felt really bad because I'm like, oh no, my friend's going to commit suicide because I can't talk to them. And I'm like, hey, so that's a time when you don't have to figure it out all yourself. That's when you gotta like involve some other people. Adults type people.
So heavy. Wow.
Yeah. And because the phone is that connection, you're like, hey, this is my connection to the entire world. It really is like losing a limb for teenagers when you're like, hey, I'm going to take your phone away because you broke the rules. So I think it's important for us as parents and adults to get curious and ask, okay, so why are you spending time on your phone until 2 a.m.? I feel like this is not healthy for you. My inclination is to take your phone away. Can you explain to me why this is important? Maybe we can figure out some other alternative. So yeah, I think it forces us as parents to get more creative too, to make sure we're not just be like black and white, this is what you do. And if you go beyond this line, you get punished. And you're like, okay, well, that gives us no nuance in the world. And I think there's a lot of nuance in the world.
It really is. Yeah, I appreciate that. That being said, because there is a value to the phone. It's not valueless.
No, yeah. It's a tool. It's a double-edged sword.
I hate it. Just kidding. I turn off my notifications now. Like, I forget to turn them on because that's how, like, I have to. Otherwise, I don't function. Like, I can't. I'm glued to it. Like, I like it, but it's just, it's bad.
You do scroll a little too much.
Yeah, I'm down though. I keep getting like the weekly like reports or whatever. So I'm down 48%. I keep getting more. Yeah, I'm doing good. It's just the notifications. Once I don't go to my phone unless I have to like look up something. Like Google is still, I keep going to that.
Oh, you don't get the screen time notifications? Or do you you look at your screen time notifications?
Oh, nice. No, so I like the like the weekly screen time that it sends you. Yeah, so I get that once a week.
Oh, I shut that off.
The little
I'm doing like a weird like scientific experiment on myself to see like what like if I turn off certain notifications, am I staying away from my phone more? So when I turn off Snapchat, Messenger, Facebook, and all that, and my work, I stay off my phone longer. So like I get more, you know what I mean? So I don't know.
Productive time. Yeah.
Yes. Like, yeah. But I'm also very productive. Like I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm very productive in the morning when no one's up and talking to me. Once 9 o'clock hits and everyone's up and then I get messages, I'm like, oh no. So I go downhill.
No, 100%. I get that. I get the most work done when everyone's gone home.
Yeah, I love working early in the morning and then I'm done early and then I'm like, this is a great day. So it's good.
One last thing that I hear a lot from teens and parents is that just a lack of understanding, like, oh, my kid used to be this way and now they're withdrawn and they're staying up till 2 a.m. and they're doing all those things. So a lot of psychoeducation about what's normal teen behavior is really been helpful in like calming down those anxieties and fears for teens and parents. And it's like, the thing is like when you're going through puberty and your body's changing, is like your body suddenly decides you don't need to sleep until like the middle of the night. And that's normal. It's just like a thing our bodies do. And you're like, that's like, and like withdrawing and becoming an individual, like all of that's normal teen stuff. You're like, if it becomes significant and starts interfering with your ability to function, that's when we get concerned. But you know what? Teens are going to do those things. And that's okay.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, that's a really important thing. There's so much that we kind of read into a little bit too much with our kids and our teens,
Oh, yeah.
And I think a good 60-70% of it is just our fear of what if. It's not what's happening. It's where's this going? What kind of a lazy kid am I raising? Or, some kind of delinquent that's up all night. And, it's not really what's happening so much as where's it going to lead?
Right.
But the more we fight these things, often the worse they get.
Yeah. And then just slowing things down, getting curious, asking questions rather than assuming. Like, I think that's just a good life skill. And it's really easy to get complacent when we're like, oh, I know my kid. Like, and suddenly they're like, I know why my kid's doing that. And my kid will be like, no, I'm not. Don't assume about me. I'm like, you're 8. Why are you getting so sassy?
Yeah. And then a lot of times it's not malicious, right? Just what you're saying is be curious about it. Don't assume that it's malicious or it's just specifically being rebellious. The other thing I think for parents, because I've often said this to parents, is it's okay for you about your child to be like, I can't deal with this right now. Just let it go. Are they safe? Are they okay? Generally, if it's something sort of minor, something that is not going to be a risk right away, then let it go for a bit. It's okay.
There's a great value in parent timeout.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely not. Probably, I assume you're not a fan of parents that take their kid's phone or laptop and then, destroy it, shoot it, roll over it with the car and put it on YouTube.
No, I think any kind of like aggressive and violent intervention as discipline is actually like punitive, and I'm not a fan of that. Yeah. I think there are times as parents we gotta like use our big voice and we gotta yell and we gotta like say, do it because I said so, and then we can talk afterward. But I think that like just enough to keep kids safe, just enough to get the job done, but don't take it beyond that. And if we notice that we can't stop it like just enough, then we're like, I'm going to tag out and come back to this. Like, you know what? I'm so mad right now that I'm going to like set this down and walk away from you because I don't want to say mean things.
Yeah. Yeah. That respect within the relationship is so important both ways.
Yeah.
I've always tried to treat my child that like he's going to be a future adult.
Yeah.
Right? That this is not a subordinate. This is someone it is my job to guide and provide direction for, but he's going to be a person, and he's probably going to be in charge of my nursing home at some point. So it'd be nice.
You really want to build some big inroads. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, you want to be able to articulate the whys, not just be like, do it because I said so, or over explain. You're like, it's got to mean like, okay, I'm going to give you a short amount of information because your small brains can't handle that much, and then we can like ask questions. But yeah, it's a constantly evolving project.
So final thought, Linda.
I totally over explain.
I do too. Like, let's talk all day long about it. I'll explain to the end of the world, and my husband's like, just go do it. Okay, right. Just like go and do. The talking is done.
Final thoughts. Well, I mean, this is a complex issue, and if we're lucky, we all get through adolescence unscathed. And so it is a time that we can't just skip over as, oh, you won't worry about this when you're an adult, because it defines our lives. And what they're going through right now, it's big, it's different, and we never had to go through it, so we don't know what we're talking about.
Right.
No.
So we have to be curious. We have to be kind. We have to try to connect. I think that's the biggest thing, is just maintain those connections, even if the situation is not ideal.
Right.
Oh, I gotta love the final thoughts, guys? All right. Well, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Kristen, so much for joining us today, because obviously we truly do appreciate it. Thank you again to all of our listeners for free mental wellness resources. Yes, I said free. You can actually follow us on Instagram at Kelly Mental Health. If you would like to book an appointment with Kristen or any of our very talented therapists, you can visit us at our website at www.kellymentalhealth.com, and you can book your appointment actually online. If that doesn't work and you want to talk to someone in person, you can call us, area code 807-767-3888. So we will see you guys again next time. And again, thank you so much for listening. Bye, guys.
Did you know that standing with your hands on your hips, chest pushed out, and chin up like a superhero is a good way to combat anxiety?
And belly breathing a few minutes a day keeps us calmer so we can think clearly.
Or what about using the WIN method with someone you love to make sure your needs are met?
With online sessions, you can learn skills like this with the therapists at Kelly Mental Health.
It's going to be okay. We can help.
To find out more, visit us at kellymentalhealth.com.